Well, praise Yah, everyone. I count it a privilege to be your guest facilitator on tonight. We'll be coming from the first chapter of Ruth. There's so much in this chapter. And although many of us have probably read the entire book, we want to focus specifically on the first chapter on tonight and glean as much as we can from it. So we'll start our study. Can someone read verses 1 and 2 for us?
Sister Letty.
Sis Letty? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Starting in verse 1.
Yes, verses 1 and 2.
Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons Malon and Kilion, Euphrates of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there.
Okay, sis, what do you see in these 2 verses? And any introduction that you'd like to make pertaining to this chapter?
Sure. So it just sounds like both Naomi and her husband had left the land of Judah because there was a famine at that time, and they came to settle into the land of Moab. And the names are really interesting. I kind of just looked up the names of what they meant. But it's just interesting how they had left at that time the land of Judah they left it because of the famine. And they went into a city and they went to the country of Moab, and Moab itself is an interesting country because of who the Moabites were. Real quickly, I just noticed that the Moabites, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think they're like descendants of Lot and his oldest daughter. But that's pretty much all I got from this, Amalinda.
Okay, that's really good, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that the aspect of Moab, because Moab plays a really important part in this lesson in this study on tonight. You said that you did. We'll get more into that. You said that you did look up some of the names. Would you like to share with us what you found with the names that you looked up?
Yes, and please, if mine is it's very just simple. So if any other sisters would like to give their insight, but so for the husband, Elimelech, it's age 458 in the Blue Letter Bible, and it says, "My Elohim is king."
Right. Mm-hmm.
For Naomi, age 5280, "My delight." It's interesting for her 2 sons. And correct me if I'm saying it wrong. Malone, age 4247, it means sick, and in the Hebrew Chaldee lexicon, it means termination. And the second son, Kilion, age 3630, it means pinning, or in the Hebrew Chaldee lexicon, it means wasting away. So the names of the sons are really interesting to me because they sound very gloomy, very, very gloomy.
Absolutely. I thought the same thing. You are right on target there, Sis Leticia. I said the same thing. So who would name their children sick and pining like that, or pinning? And like you said, because But I'm wondering, were they named these names before, when they were born? We don't really know how exactly or whether these were the names that were given to them with who wrote the story. Do you follow what I'm saying? But I found that to be very interesting. Also, with what you discovered and when you brought up pertaining to Moab. Yes, Moab was the ancestral son, one of the ancestral sons of Lot. If someone has their hand up, Sis June, I know she'll bring that to my attention. And Moab plays quite an exceptional part in the story, because Moab was pretty much like ostracized for a couple of reasons. Did anybody else find anything else interesting about Moab before I go any further with that? Very good, Sis Leticia. Thank you so very much. Now, what I did want to point out, about this book is that this is one of the very few books that's written by a female, named after a female. Praise Yah. Also, what I noticed with the first two verses is we just came out of Judges, so we know that this was during a period when the judges ruled. The setting is set about 1000 BC. So the theologians, they state that it was probably like at the end of the Judges, pretty much at the end of the Judges somewhere. And that we don't really know who wrote this book, but it has been attributed to, just like Judges, it has been attributed to Samuel. But they don't really know that for sure. They don't know whether he did or whether he didn't. Anything else? Okay, with Naomi, you're right about Naomi and Sister Leticia. I think that plays a very important part, Naomi's name, because her name comes from the root Naim, and it means to be pleasant, delightful, lovely. It can mean surpass in beauty. So we're getting a picture of who Naomi was before all this stuff happened to her. She was she's given the picture of being a very, very lovely young lady. As we go through the first chapter, we'll glean more about who she was and everything. But I think that was a really important thing. And only one more thing that I wanted to add for us, because we are all in the Hebrew class, Moab, right? Now, it's interesting how even the name, because this is what we're studying. We're studying how the meaning of the letters give you a picture of the name. Now, with Moab, we have basically like two prefixes. We have the ma or the mem, which always, it can mean from. Then we have the wa or the ua, or as they call it now, the va, which is and. So we have, look at this, we have from and we have and. And then what do we have with the aleph and the bet? What does the aleph and the bet combination, what word does that make?
Father's house.
Yes, sis. What is this, Sis Nisha?
I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but the Father's house.
Ab is father.
Yes.
Yes, and it can mean the Father's house. So now look at what we're seeing here. From and father. The Moabs, they came from him. His daughter, she was his father. She was his father. He was her father, but he was also her child's father. So it was from father and father. Do you see that? From father and father. He was her father, but the Moabites came from the father also. And it's right there in the name. Is that Did you understand that? Because I don't want to go ahead of anyone and explain anything. The mem, since Nisha, this was is basically for you and Sister Torah and unique, some of y'all that's been studying this Hebrew a little bit longer than the rest of us. But
We
the mem
have,
is from.
just to let you know, we have 3 hands, Sister Linda. So we have
Okay.
we have
All right, thank you, Sis June. The mem means from, and the y is and. So from and father. So it shows his 2 positions where he was as a father to the Moabites. Praise Yah. Okay, whose hand was up first, sis?
First, we have Sister Unique, then Sister Nisha, and then Sister Katora.
Okay, you can go right after one another.
Okay, so I was just gonna point out something that I noticed. I was noticing that, Yah was taking them from a place where there was famine, and I see that pretty often where Yah will move us from situations that are unfavorable, and then when the time is right, he brings us back. And I see with Abraham, and I was also thinking of Elisha when he told the Shunammite a woman that, there will be a famine and you should go to Egypt and rest there for a time. And then when it's time, you can come back into the land of Israel. So that's something that I noticed.
Praise Yah. And with that, it isn't interesting how it was a famine, but the famine took place in Bethlehem. Another Hebrew word that we had, Beit Lahem, house of bread. Isn't that something? Who's next, Sis June?
Sister Nisha.
Sis Nisha?
I just wanted to comment that I thought it was significant, especially as we go through the story, that Ruth's name means friend.
Yes. Friend, companion. And that is very important. That's a very important point to lay as a foundation, because as we continue on with the story, we'll see how she lived up to her name. Praise Yah. Who's next, Sis June?
Sister Katora.
Sis Keturah?
Shalom again. So sorry, I lost my train of thought. All right, so I wanted to comment on the Ab when we were talking about that.
Okay.
I didn't get Father's house because, Olive being the strength and then Bet being the house. I see it meaning the strength of the house. How are you seeing the Father's house though? Because I know Ab means father, but that word by itself means father.
Well, that was Sis Nisha. That's how she saw it. She saw it as father's house. Sis Nisha saw it, but Ab means father.
Right. So then the
But
two.
from the Mennonic meaning, if you want to do the Mennonic meaning, which each letter means, their left does mean the head of the house, and Beit does mean house. So it is father's house.
But the Olive is the strength, power, leader, right? Which you could also associate with Yahusha.
Yes, and it's the strength, and and Elohim, and as Elohim is also, it also means that also. It always signifies the left, always signifies the Father in the midst of it, from the Mennonic meaning of it.
Okay.
He's
And also,
Aleph and Tav. What were you saying?
oh yeah, and I was just gonna go back to Unique's point. I thought that was really interesting because that's one of the first things I noticed too, is that there was a famine, and then you see God's people moving, and so kind of going back to what we were saying last night, when you know the Father's name, you know how he is. It's like obvious. You could see. So there's a problem here. The Father is moving his people where he wants them to be, so he could be a place.
You're a bit choppy, Sis Keturah. You're a bit choppy.
Okay. Is it, can you hear me?
I heard you when you said, can you hear me?
Oh, okay. I was just saying that that was a good point, because you can see the Father always positioning his people when there's a time of trouble.
Oh yes, absolutely. It was a good point. Sis Unique always makes good points, and I love the way she makes her parallels. She always finds the parallels. That's a really, really excellent manner of her observation, the way she observes things. Are there any more remarks on the first two verses?
I had a question. Do famines, and excuse my ignorance, but do famines still go on today? Or was it more so in the like Bible times that we saw a lot of famine?
Well, would someone like to answer that question? Yes, Sis Nisha.
When I think of whether or not famines would still occur in our time of today, I think of Matthew 24, where he speaks of, the times that we would see. And I think he specifically, and forgive me, I don't have it pulled up, but I would say that yes, there's several types of famine, right? There is literal famine where we, don't have food, and in many respects, some of us might feel like we were encroaching upon that, literally as we speak, with everything that's happening with the virus. The other perspective I think of is the spiritual famine of the word. And we know that, I believe that we are living in a time where there is a spiritual famine of the word and those that are following the word, according to Abba Yahuah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, and okay, yes, absolutely. There are spiritual famines, but in this particular case, this was a famine for bread, food. There was a hunger in the land, and that's why they migrated to this to a different location. And as far as Sis June, if you ask if there's still famines today, well, we have more responses. Let me allow them to respond first. Sis, who was next? Sis June.
The panel says Sister Leticia and then Sister Couture.
Okay.
Oh,
I was just going to respond to Sister Nisha. For the verse, I think it's Amos chapter 8, verses 11 through 12, and that's the famine of the word. Would you like me to read it, Amalinda?
Oh, sure. Yes, you can read it.
It's okay. Starts in again. It's Amos chapter 8, verses 11. Behold, the days come, says Yahuwah Elohim, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor of thirst for water, but of hearing the word of Yahuwah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sis Leticia. Sis Couture, I think you were next.
Okay, so I was Nisha and Letty, they kind of said what I was going to say. I was going to share the verse and talk about the spiritual and physical famine, but they both said kind of summed it up pretty good.
Yes, I'm very familiar with that verse also. And sometimes there might be both. There may be a physical, and I would even say a mental also, and a spiritual famine. A mental, I would consider a mental, from various mental aspects of not walking in the truth or having a false a false aspect of the truth. There are many snares that I can even see it from that particular aspect. But we do know that in this particular case, that's a parallel that we can run, and we can see how that's applicable unto the day. But in this particular case, I think it's very clear that this was a physical famine. Praise Yah. Can we get someone to read? If there's no more responses for the first two verses, can we get someone to read from verses 3 through 5? I'm trying to break the verses up that are in the same context. Okay, so some may get 2 verses, and then you may get someone that may have 5 verses. Sis Nisha?
Yes, I will read.
Thank you.
And Elimelech, husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. And they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelt there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion also died, both of them. So the woman was bereaved of her 2 sons and of her husband.
Okay. So what do you see here, Sis Nisha?
I would just think about how difficult, going back to what Sister Letty shared with us about the meanings of the names of the 2 sons. And the fact that she lost her 2 sons, I would think that would be pretty devastating for a mother. And how also too, I guess the other thing that points out to me is that they point out in the story the wives that her sons took. So I think that's important, that the fact that they took wives of the women of Moab. To me, that stands out. But then again, I was thinking how horrible that would be to lose your sons as a mother.
Well, absolutely. You made 2 very good points. I think we need to go into the aspect of them being Moabites a little bit more. We did touch on it pertaining to it being the product of the ancestral relationship between the daughter and father. But also now the Moabites. Can anyone shed any more information pertaining to the Moabites? I did find a few things interesting. For one thing, with the Moabites weren't allowed into the congregation for up to 10 generations, but then it says forever, so they don't know whether the forever was literal or whatnot, but so that you can follow along, let me see, that's located in Numbers, I believe. Let me see, I got it over here somewhere. In Numbers, okay, Deuteronomy 23 verses 3 and 4. Let's go there for a minute. Deuteronomy 23 verses 3 and 4. Can someone read Deuteronomy 23 verses 3 and 4, please?
I'll read that for you.
Thank you.
Bear with me. I'm having technical difficulties turning my pages. Tell me the one more time. I'm sorry.
Deuteronomy, the 23rd chapter, verses 3 and 4.
All right. 23rd, 3 and 4.
So we can see, what's going on with this a little bit more.
Okay. Uh, pardon me. All right, 23rd, 3 and 4. An Ammonite or Moabite shall not enter the assembly of Yahuah. Even a 10th generation of them shall not enter the assembly of Yahuah. Hey, that's the name of our assembly. Because they did not meet you with bread and water on the way when you came out of Mizraim, and because they hired against you Balaam, son of Beor, from Pethor of Aram, Naharim, to curse you.
Okay, you can just read 5 also, because it is applicable.
But Yahuwah, your Elohim, refused to listen to Balaam, and Yahuwah, your Elohim, turned the curse into a blessing for you, because Yahuwah, your Elohim, loves you.
Okay, so we see that because of what they did, they weren't even allowed in the congregation. So we see a precedent being set. Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, because it shows later on, as we're studying Ruth, some precedents that are being set. Praise y'all. Okay, so is there, what else do you see in these verses? Okay, now with Sis Nisha, you said that you mentioned that the various aspects of the Moabites. Did you have anything else to add, particularly, specifically about the Moabites?
I think from my previous studies, Amalinda, what I remember is that, you know, they didn't necessarily follow Yahuah traditionally. I don't think that they were walking with him, that
Right.
they were akin to quite a bit of idolatry.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was very profound in regards to Ruth and the dynamic that she plays later on in the story.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And also now we are laying the foundation also for what Naomi's going through. She loses her husband. She's a widow, as Sis Nisha stated. And now she loses 2 sons. Now these verses of scripture tell us that they were married. Ruth and Orpah were married to her sons for about a period of 10 years. So there must have been a pause in between the time she became a widow, somewhere between at least up to 10 years. But it's bad. It's hard enough when a woman loses a husband. I, for one, can vouch for that. I've been a widow twice at a very, very young age, and then a few years ago. So I know what it's like. I know what it's like to lose a husband, especially when it's very dear to you. And especially in this day here, can you kind of set a setting of how important husbands were and sons were to women? Anybody? I've seen, while I'm waiting for someone to participate, I've been to quite a few funerals of my sisters, of women that I was acquainted with that lost their sons, especially living in urban areas where the violence and everything is so high at times. We spent hours praying against violence and all of that. At one time, so many of those that I practically raised, that I opened up home study in my house for, passed away and broke my heart into pieces each and every time. So I really know they were all my sons. And I know what it feels like for a mother to experience this type of loss, whether it's a biological loss or whether It's just a close-knit loss of family. As we all know, family can be more than just biologically. So we see these three women in dire straits right here, grieving, hurting, the two young girls losing their husbands. So this must not have been a very, very happy time for them. It must have been a very, very grievous time. What else do you see here? Anything else you can glean out of these verses?
Sister Couture has a comment.
Yes, Sister Keturah.
Sorry, I got cut off, but when you were talking about husband and wives, I just wanted to comment back on that. I thought that with her particular situation, it must have been very hard, because once you lose your husband, it's usually the son's job to step up and take care of the mother. But then she lost her two sons too. So I can imagine probably, and then she's in a foreign country, one that's not her own. So I'm just imagining probably the hopelessness that she may be experiencing. But then I'm also noticing that sometimes Yah brings us to that place so that we can remember that He's all we need, even those really hard, dark, deep places. I just wanted to also add that.
Well, I think you've given an excellent summary, an excellent epitome of what's going on at this time, because that definitely paints the picture. Thank you for that, Sis Keturah. Sis Leticia?
Just to piggyback from Sister Keturah, it's interesting too that, you know, when she did lose her husband and her two sons, it happened in the course of 10 years, and that's not a long time. 10 years is not a long time. So that was pretty interesting to me. I mean, you know, a lot of it's just devastating to. It must have been devastating for Naomi to go through that.
Absolutely. No one wants to be in that place for sure. No one wants to be in that place for sure. And if the sons were sick, if there was some type of pandemic or some type of sickness going on at the time, that would be one thing. But one of the worst things that a woman can go through is losing her husband just right off the back. And that's what happened to me. I can share a bit of my testimony as we're going through on, because I experienced this. My first two children were both still in Pampers. They were both between 1 and 2 years old when my first husband was shot and killed. And so that just like changed my whole life. So I can imagine what it was for these young girls to experience something like this. This type of thing changes your whole life. Your life is never the same again. And I would pray that no one has to go through anything like this, that they never have to go through any of it, especially as it's being stated here. And Naomi shows her strength. Can you imagine how strong she has to be? Because most people can't even deal with losing one child, let alone two. I've been at funerals. I've been part of the ministerial team that had to do these funerals, and then at other times had to go and walk up to one of our loved ones, one of our sisters, and just one look in their face is you can't even say anything. All you can do is like just rub their face and rub their hands and rub their heads, because they're in so much sorrow. It's a terrible thing.
I had a comment, Melinda.
Yes.
I was thinking too, in that time period, it probably was, I mean, there's the pain itself of losing her loved ones. But also in that time period, the males provided a lot for the females, from what I understand. And so she was probably dependent on her sons performing certain tasks or duties for her, and obviously her husband too, like he was the protector. And so here she is in a situation, no food, and probably normally the husband would have been the person to kind of look out for her, and or the sons. They, in that culture, from what I understand, like there were certain duties that they did that she probably didn't have anyone to help her with once they were gone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's exactly what the setting is. The men being the providers. What do? Young girls with her. So we see the story unfolding. And I think that this is a book of strength. But in order for us to see the strength, we have to also see the sorrow. Praise your precious name, Father. Is there anything else you girls would like to add to the verses we just read, 3 to 5? If not, can I get a reader for verses 6 and 7?
I'll read.
Thank you, sis June.
And she rose up with her daughters-in-law and returned from the fields of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that Yahuah had visited his people in giving them bread. And she left the place where she was, and her two daughters-in-laws with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Yehudah.
What do you see, sis?
Well, it definitely got my attention in verse 6, where it said, in the fields of Moab, that Yahuah had visited his people, giving them bread. Is that correct, Yahuah? That got my attention. And she took action too. Like she rose up and, and she was kind of leading, because she took her daughters-in-law with them. It seems like they were following her, and that's really it, and that she was going to return to Judah.
Okay, thank you. Sis Leticia.
What's interesting as Sister June was reading is in verse 6, and she touched on this where it says, for she had heard in the country of Moab that Yahuah had visited his people in giving them bread. I believe Judah is the house of bread. I think that's what I got. And so I think it's interesting that the land or the city, it's Judah, and we have Yahuah giving them bread. I'm sure it was also, I don't know necessarily it was just bread, maybe it was him helping the economy where people were not working, were not able to afford for food and so forth. But I thought that was pretty interesting.
Okay, very well. Thank you very much. Sis Unique.
I was seeing Yah's mercy on them. Here she is losing her husband and her son. And they're in the midst of this, Yah opened a way that, okay, now I'm going to bring you back to a familiar place among your people to worship, and you will have bread to eat. That's something I saw.
Yes, sis, absolutely. Let's see the Father moving right in the midst, right? Thank you very much for bringing that point out. For surely that is present right there. Sis Nisha?
I think my comment will piggyback on Unique's comment. We know that the Yehuda means to praise. And we've talked about this before, that when we are in a place of, we're down or we're sorrow, many ways that we are reinvigorated or relived with Yah is through praise and through worship. So I think it's on a spiritual level that she knows to turn back to praise or to Yahuda is significant and an example for what we can do in times of grief and sorrow.
Well, praise Yah. Yes, you girls are flowing. Absolutely. Yes, and with the Bethlehem, we just had the word lakem in our Hebrew study on Wednesday night. That means bread. And the Beth is house of bread. That's the name of Bethlehem. And it was called Bethlehem, Judah also at that time. Praise Yah. Very good. Very good. Thank you so much for that. Those responses, that's setting the pace. We're getting an idea of what's going on now. And as far as I think what happened was, while they were in Moab, she heard about what was going on in Bethlehem, Judah, that Father had restored. So faith comes by hearing by the word of Yah, right? She got that word. She was far, far away from where it was happening, where her home was, but somehow she got the word. And this gravitates us forward into what's happening in the story. Okay, praise Yah. Okay, so now we just read from 6 to 7, right? Now this is going to be a longer passage. We need someone to read from 8 to 13. Okay, Sis Leticia, thank you.
Okay, starting in verse 8. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house, that Yahuwah deal kindly with you, as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. Yahuwah grant you that ye may find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should have a husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, why would you tarry for them till they were grown? Would you stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes, that the hand of Yahuwah is gone out against me.
So what's happening here, Sis Leticia?
So it just looks like Naomi is, because of her son's passing away, she's letting her daughters-in-law, letting them know, you have no more, the covenant is already broken, if that's correctly to say. Like, you ladies cannot go back to your homes, back to your mom and your father. You have no more ties with me.
Very good. Very good. Yes, with Naomi, I agree with you 100%. And I find it interesting that she told them, she didn't say return each of you to your father's house. She said return to your mother's house. In these verses here, I see such a beautiful picture of daughter-in-laws and their mothers-in-laws. We hear so many generalizations. There's always so much going on with oftentimes the daughters-in-laws and mothers-in-laws not quite having the right type of relationship or whatever. But isn't this a beautiful relationship between daughters-in-laws and mothers-in-laws? This is the way y'all wants daughters-in-laws and mom-in-laws to be. A perfect, instead of we find so much of the negative traits. Oftentimes, I'm sure many of you probably have recognized it in relationships that you're familiar with. Okay, so she tells them to go back to their mother's house because we got a mother and daughter relationship here. There's no more I can do for you here. Go back to your mother. She's reminding them of their mother. And I find it interesting that she's struggling with one of the laws of the Hebrews, which you will find in Deuteronomy, the 25th chapter, verses 5 through 10. And that is that if a woman was married to a man, and if the man passed away, then his brother would marry her. Naomi, when you get some time, Deuteronomy 25 verses 5 to 10 will shed some light on that. It'll be important to read that because later on in the story, it'll help to shed additional light. And Naomi is telling them, listen, I'm an elderly woman. I'm not going to have any more babies. I'm not going to have any more sons. If you stay here with me, you'll never get married again. If you're waiting to marry one of my offspring, because that's just not going to happen. Go back to your mother's house. And as you said, Sis Leticia, the covenant has been broken because the covenant is broken through, of the marriage covenant is broken at death. Go back to your mom's house so you'll have an opportunity to meet someone, to be comfortable. Meet someone that can cause you to live comfortably. Instead of, I don't have anything, none of us have anything. We don't know what's going to happen with us. So it's a very, very interesting thing how she tried her best to reason with them to leave, and it shows such an enormous amount of love that they had for her. Shows what type of person Naomi must have been, because quite frankly, if we want to talk frank about it, a lot of daughters-in-laws can't stand their mothers-in-law. And a lot of times the mother-in-laws are doing a little shake of the head also about some of the daughters-in-laws. So I love this story. I love the way that this here, as Sis Nisha says, the tapestry that is woven here, this picture that is painted, this beautiful picture that is painted here of how mothers-in-laws and daughter-in-laws, their relationships should be cultivated in very functional ways like this. Praise Yah. Is there anything else you ladies see or can share from experience pertaining to these verses?
I have a comment. I can't raise my hand, by the way.
That's okay.
I love my mother-in-law. So I'm glad that, I have a good relationship with my mother-in-law and we love one another. But I know exactly what you mean. There's so many, you see like Cinderella and, all these stories, fairy tales and real life stories where they don't get along. So I realize I have a Baruch situation.
Yes.
But I was kind of tickled to read how, she's trying to reason with them or give a rationale. She actually communicates, I don't have any more sons to give you. And even if I found a husband and got pregnant, would you wait around for, and restrain yourself until they grow up to be the age where you can marry them? Like, she's looking at it or trying to talk to them from a very practical sense. But apparently their love for her wasn't solely based on her provision of a man that they could, you know, have a family with. And it doesn't say if they had grand or kids, like if there were grandchildren in this situation, but it was their love alone for her, and their loyalty to her, and but like she felt, you know, your way, as we're going to read later, your ways are my ways, your Yahuwah is my Yahuwah, and that speaks to the testimony and the model that Naomi was for them to want to adopt, you know, her belief system.
Yes, I think we have a pretty good picture of what's going on here at this time. And Sis June, like you said, I love my mother-in-laws too. They were exceptional, exemplary females, and I role modeled myself a lot after my second mother-in-law, because my mom passed when I was very young, just becoming an adult. So I was grateful for my mom-in-law being there for me. She was the one that maintained those standards up high, that I knew that I always reminded me of the things that my mom wasn't there to tell me anymore. And I appreciated her. And as far as my daughters-in-laws, I have precious relationships with all of them. Most of my daughters-in-law call me mommy.
Mm-hmm.
That's how, and it's not the auntie thing, like everybody's your auntie or everybody's your, you know, like from an urban vernacular. It's because of the relationships that have been established over the years. And even if they're not even with my sons anymore, it's still mommy. Mommy, it didn't turn back to Mrs. Sandifer. If the relationship broke up, it's always been mommy all throughout the years. And so that tells me a lot about that. The times that we spend together were appreciated by them, and certainly appreciated by me also. Praise Yah. And people need to hear that side also. So I'm glad all this is coming out. You know, this is all a part of us growing. You know, we have to understand that mother-in-law and daughter-in-law's relationships is not a competitive thing. Nor can a mother-in-law run a daughter-in-law's life or try to make them just like them or whatever. So many different scenarios play a part. But it's a wonderful thing when just an innocent relationship can be cultivated especially through women, because we have so many stereotypes about women. So it's always a wonderful thing to be able to see these type of testimonies, these type of witnesses of how women are to carry themselves. Praise Yah. Do anyone have any more to add from the verses that we have read thus far?
Sister Anisha?
Yes, Sis Nisha.
I just wanted to piggyback, Melinda, on what you just commented. I was going to say, you know, what a beautiful testimony that is to those that choose to walk with Yah. You know, the harmonious relationships, you know, I think that existed between Naomi and Ruth and Orpah. Certainly that's a testimony to them walking with Yah, I would imagine, and how they looked at things, how they approached their relationship, the communication, and, you know, in a broken world that we live in, I think this is a beautiful example of, and an illustration of the way things can be when you're walking with him. You know, because those were two young ladies that did not come from the fold. They were not, you know, Israelites.
And you know, that was the next point. That was just what I was just thinking. I was just thinking of that as you were speaking. I wanted to ask you ladies, now how do you feel about this? Because they are depicted as Gentiles, okay? But now, Lot was Abraham's nephew. Okay, Lot was Abraham's nephew. They were from the same family. His first nephew, not second or third, walked down to Jesus, his first nephew, and these are the offspring of them. I mean, aren't these? Isn't that family? Do you follow what I'm saying? And I'm just wondering why are they being considered Gentiles and not part of Yasharal, when in fact they were biological relatives? How do you feel about that? I mean, it's a thought. How do you feel? How do you feel about it? Do anybody have anything any thoughts on that? Because this was Lot and Abraham were relative. Yes, Sis Nisha.
This makes me go back, Melinda, to the comment that you made about the name of Moab.
Yes.
And I think it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful illustration of what true Yasharal or Israel is in the Father's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the landscape of where we are today, with so many people that are waking up to who they are, whether, you know, bloodline Yasharal or the strangers that are grafted in, Abba shows us through these, you know, through this story, what really matters in terms of who is his. And he does
Absolutely.
that through the name of where Ruth comes from. And he calls Ruth a friend, and he calls us a friend, or Yahusha does. So I don't know. I think that it's important. I think we can see a lot in terms of what really matters to Abba when it comes to who's a part of Yasharal or part of Israel.
Right. And I think that's the importance of, as we go on with the next verses. Well, we'll get to that. We'll expound a little bit more on that, but you're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%, sis. Okay, we at 7:08. I want to get this whole chapter in. Can I get someone to read verses 14 through 18?
Go, Letty.
Yes, Sis Leticia.
I'm sorry, unless somebody else wanted to read, I might have jumped the gun here.
I know there weren't any other volunteers for that particular group of passages.
Okay, I'm sorry. So it's from what verse, Melinda?
14 through 18.
Oh, okay. Starting in verse 14. And they lifted up their voice and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law. But Ruth clave unto her, and she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and whither thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy Elohim my Elohim. Wherefore thou diest, will I die. There will I be buried. Yahuwah do so to me, and more also, if out, but death part thee and me. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left, speaking unto her. Praise God.
What do you see, sis?
There's a lot in here, Melinda. I think just in general, what I see is the beauty of, again, the daughter-in-law, Naomi, because when it says, you know, Orpah just kissed her and said, okay, I'm leaving. You know, there was a kiss, you know, there was a genuine kiss, but kissed her and then she left. But then we have Naomi, she claved, is that the word? Claved onto, not Naomi, yeah, Ruth claved onto Naomi. And I looked up the word clave because that was kind of interesting to me. And what I got was to stay, keep close, follow closely. And that to me was beautiful. I can only imagine her saying, like, holding on to her and saying, no, I am going to stay with you. Like, pleading, like, if you tell me to stay, I will stay. And I think that was beautiful because I was picturing it how, it just happened. So.
Yes, beautiful, right? Wow. Just like a movie. They could have made a movie. I'm sure they have made a movie out of this. Sis June, who's next? Sis Chantel or Sis Unique?
Sister Unique and then Sister Chantel.
Yes, Sis Unique.
I think Sister Chantel, she was first, because when I looked, her hand was already up.
Oh, we apologize. Sis Chantel?
Shabbat Shalom, guys. That's okay. Either it's first. Sister Letitia, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, she basically said a lot of the things that I saw with this, but I still have to say, with these verses, it really gives you the sense of mind that Naomi was in. She's just looking at them like, these are two beautiful young ladies that can continue their journey in life. You guys are young, go find husbands, have children. Let me go on my own journey. But
Yes.
then as you said, you saw the love. And I must say that in these days and times, you don't see this type of relationship with mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws. It's like it doesn't exist whatsoever. So reading this in the Bible really gives me encouragement that this is something that can be done and is going on. Along with this as well, earlier on you said that Ruth, the meaning of Ruth, Hebrew meaning is friend, and I really felt that she was being a genuine friend to Naomi, because Naomi, she lost her husband, she lost her two sons. They were like her life, and I believe that in last week's study when we were doing the study, the morning, I think it's either the morning session or just the general Genesis study. I can't remember which one, but one of the sisters said that the mothers, it's like the mother's life are rotated around their sons. So they're always checking up on their sons, and they always want to know, like, make sure that their son is picking the best daughters, or the best wives, sorry, the best daughter-in-laws for them and stuff like that. And I believe that Ruth was like, she saw how lonely, or she saw the mindset that Naomi was in, and she was like, no, this woman has been good to me. I don't want her to take this journey by herself. She needs that emotional support, and that's what Ruth was there for.
Wow, Sis Chantel, that was beautiful. You really, really hit it on the nose, girl. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was really beautiful. Sis Unique?
Amen. That was really beautiful. I'm just gonna just piggy off a lot of what she said. I was just looking at the word cleave in particular, and it was the same word that is used in Genesis 2:24 when it says that a husband should leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife. And then it was also the same thing in Deuteronomy 10 when Moses was telling the children of Israel that they should cleave to Yahuah. It's the same word that is used where Ruth is like clinging to Naomi. And it's so beautiful that she also saw Yah's hand in Naomi's life. Like truly, the meaning of her name showed that she was a delight to be around. She was pleasant. And it's amazing how with Ruth's name, I was looking at Proverbs 17, verse 17, and it says that a friend loveth at all times. And I was looking at the Hebrew word for a friend, and it says a companion, a fellow, ones who tend to, one who cares for, one who finds delight in. So it's like, here's this person that is so pleasant, and then a friend that is a companion to the person that Yah has delight in. So I thought that was just beautiful.
Absolutely, sis. Absolutely. And thank you for giving us such a beautiful picture. You know, this is this. We're seeing so much in this. Thank you, ladies, so much for sharing your perspectives on what you're seeing and everything, because truly it is very enlightening. And I'm sure it's going to be a barakah to many, because it certainly is a barakah to me. Praise Yah. Okay, so we have verses 19 through 22. Who would like to take 19 through 22? I'll read. I haven't read tonight. I'll start it off for us. So they two went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass when they were come to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved about them. And they said, is this Naomi? And she said unto them, call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and Yahuah have brought me home again empty. Why then call ye me Naomi, seeing Yahuah has testified against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. So much, there's so much in these verses. Would anybody else like to share anything before I share what I got out of these verses? Sis Chantel?
From these verses, I've been doing my little research while we're having this study, and I've learned that the name Mara, the Hebrew meaning should be bitter. So when I look at Ruth, what she's portraying her emotions. She feels bitter. She doesn't feel as if Yah's grace is with her. And trust me, Yah's grace is with her, because we saw that Ruth is there with her, being like an emotional support, looking after, making sure that she gets where she needs to be, safe and sound, right? And of course, I know that Yah is with them, else they wouldn't have reached there safe and sound. It also shows that Naomi, she was a very pleasant person. It says that the entire where is it? It says that they all moved towards her, so everyone is happy to see her. And when she said that, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, which means bitter, because the Almighty had dealt very bitterly with me. It gives me the mindset that she's looking like, yeah, like, what have I done that you have afflicted me? You have taken away my husband, my son. So I feel like she's really grieving at this moment. And she's not hiding it. She's saying it right there.
Absolutely, sis. Absolutely, sis Chantel. You're absolutely right about that. So she was so beautiful, so full, as sis Chantel has so eloquently stated. When she left, everything was looking up, had a husband, 2 sons. She was full, what a woman in that time would consider to be full, to be contributing what she was predestined to do. And I guess, I don't know what she must have looked like when she got home, and all those that were familiar with her saw her. But it was like, is this Naomi? Is this the Naomi that we know? I'm sure she had gotten older, but sometimes the trials of life, the sufferings of life can take a toll on a person, and sometimes you can see it in their physical state. I love how you brought out the fact that Mara means bitter. But we got to realize something. This is only a phase of the story. Praise Yah. It's good for us to see what she went through. She has made it back home, as Sis Chantel so succinctly showed us. She's made it back home, but she's not the same person that she used to be. She's telling them how she left out full, but she's come back empty. This word empty means broken into pieces. She's talking about how she's been afflicted, how she's had to suffer, and all the things that she's had to go through just to make it back home. All praise be to your precious name, Father. But as Sis Chantel says, Ruth is right there with her, never leaving her side, being her support, young and able to be the strength at this particular time. So the Father was providing for her all the time. She didn't have to make the journey alone, even though she was trying her best to make the journey alone. But after she saw how strong, how steadfast Ruth was, I guess she said, wow, this young lady has some characteristics about herself that definitely is going to make a difference in our lives at this so needed time. And also notice how, did any of you notice anything about the time that they got back to Bethlehem? What season it was? What time of the year it was?
Barley harvest.
Yes. Is that the season that we're in now? Wouldn't that be considered as Abib? Would that be considered as Abib?
I don't know. I thought that was Sukkot when they see
I
the
thought
first
so too.
sprout.
I looked at them both. That's why I'm asking, because I looked at them both also, and it basically gave me the response that the barley that because that is when the first barley is seen.
Mhm.
When the spring comes in, that's basically from an observation point when the first barley is seen. So I share some more. Let me get some more of your responses. Who's next? Sis Unique or Sis Nisha?
I had a quick comment when you were saying when they said, "Is this Naomi?" I think they may have just also been just in general surprised to see her, period. Because
oh yeah, quite possibly, yes, of course.
Because
Yes.
there's kind of like, what are you doing here?
Yeah, exactly. You've been gone for so long. But at the same time, even when people do get that type of response, they do observe various things about a person.
Yes.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
not like just a blind, you're back home. You look, when I come from down south and I come up here, people be looking at me, they be checking me out and, talking, but they be looking at me from head to toe and everything.
Right.
Sis, who's next? Sis Unique or Sis Leticia?
We have 5 minutes left, and don't charge it to my heart if I ever get the order wrong. But I believe it was Sister Unique and then Sister Leticia.
Okay, can you two try to culminate this for the last 5 minutes, please?
I'll just go to Sister Letitia because you guys already said basically everything I wanted to say. So I'll just move on to her.
I'm sorry, Sis Unique.
No, that's good.
But you shared so much anyway. You gave wonderful summaries on today. Thank you so much for everything you shared. I appreciate it.
Praise Yahuah.
Praise Yah.
Sis
Thank you.
Leticia?
Thank you, Sister Unique. Just really quickly, I think one thing I really want to point out too was, I'm going to go back in verse 16. I just wanted to kind of mention and point out her faith, the faith that Ruth had, because it's just so amazing. Like, she was living with Naomi for 10 years, and in those 10 years, she gleaned a lot from her mother-in-law. And it kind of reminded me when we were studying on Rahab, how Rahab had that faith. She when she had the two witnesses, what do you call them? The two
Spies.
they came to her, and then she spoke about the accounts of Yahuah, and she believed. And I think there was a verse that she says, your Elohim is the Elohim of the heavens. And sorry if I'm quoting it incorrectly, but I think that's just what I wanted to bring out, is that this faith that she had it's like a blind faith, and so I wanted to share scriptures in the book of John in chapter 20, where it talks about the faith, because Ruth, she believed in the account. She believed the accounts of her mother-in-law, and in John 20 it says, "Blessed are they that have not seen and yet they believe." And it just I think that's beautiful, because a lot of the times, that's counted precious to Yahuah. Those that believe and have not seen. And I feel like that's the case with Ruth. And I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was beautiful.
Yes, and it's very important. I'm grateful that I'm very happy that you went back to that, and you're absolutely right. And it shows how we can change other people's lives by the life that we live. Do you see what I'm saying? And even though she may not have been familiar with all the customs and all that, she saw enough in Naomi to want to be a part of that. And that's the type of testimony we should have. We should not be as such as professing one thing, but when people, how many times do people see the way a person live or the way they treat them or whatever, and they say, yeah, well, I don't know what Elohim or what God you serving, but that's not my idea of how, he wants you to operate. Oftentimes it's the living testimony that converts people, the way you live, and can change people's lives, change Ruth's lives, as you said, Sister Leticia, to the point that she said, oh, definitely, I want to be a part of this. And this is the testimony that we should have, living our lives in such a manner that other people want to be a part of this, a part of our faith, a part of who we're saying our Elohim is, our sovereign Father, in his mercy and his love, his forgiveness. Praise Yah. Are there any final remarks? We still have 2 minutes before we close out in prayer. Sis June, you got anything to add over there?
I didn't realize I was muted. Sorry. I was just saying a living epistle.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, praise Yah for this truly Baruch study, this blessed study that we've had on tonight. I thank all of you for your participation. This was my first time facilitating, and I thank you all for sharing and helping with the flow of the Ruach to make this yet another successful Bible study. And thank you, Sister Leticia, for inviting me to facilitate.
Hallelujah.
Shalom, Akuti, and Brohim. Thank you so much for viewing this video. We hope it was helpful to your walk in the truth. Remember to always search the scriptures on your own, to study Abba's word and show yourself approved, according to 2 Timothy 2:15. We invite you to study with us. To join us in a live study, just go to our website at assemblyofyahuah.com and click the Join Us tab. We have something available Wednesday through Saturday of every week. If you've been Baruch or blessed by this video today or any other study, we encourage you to go to the Giving tab on our website. Our elders all have their own ways of income, so none of the giving or proceeds go to them. Instead, it goes to biblical assembly needs. We also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss any new videos. We sincerely pray that Abba continues to direct your path as you acknowledge him in all your ways. Much avaha, and again, shalom.